Hello, everyone. It's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Indeed, it's us. The other person you're looking at here is Katie Sullivan. I'll give her intro in just a section. What we're going to do here is we're going to have our friend Dr. Kelly Victory in here in about half hour or so, do a little bit of COVID controversy. But before we do that, we're deeply honored to have Katie Sullivan, whose resume gets longer literally by the hour, Katie. I don't know how you do this. Let me go through some of this. Appointed by Attorney General Barr as Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs in June of 2019. She co-leads two major presidential initiatives. January 2020, Attorney General Barr appointed her Vice Chair of the President's Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice. It was to map out a national strategy for addressing major public safety issues. She's also Attorney General's designee as co-chair of Operation Lady Justice, a federal task force established by President Trump to address the incidents of missing and murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives. Previously served on White House Domestic Policy Council and as acting director of the Justice's Department of Office of Violence Against Women.
I'm tired.
This is just some of it. I edited a whole bunch of it down. Where she directed grants, training, and other activities that reduce and respond to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault. But one of her career sort of defining jobs was in the state of Colorado, where she was a state court trial judge in the state's 5th Judicial District, presided over 45,000 cases during her 11 years on the bench, and implemented and presided over a drug court that we will talk about in great detail. Katie, thank you for joining us.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Drew. I'm a huge fan. You know that. Susan, you know that.
Oh, thank you.
Very kind. But how did I summarize basically all the different jobs you have? I feel the invisible hand of Katie Sullivan behind so much going on today. So congratulations on Art being at the ONDCP and then your work at the Department of Justice. It's just phenomenal what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor and it's a privilege, really. And for us in our 50s to kind of pack our whole life up and to leave the bench was terrifying, but we really felt like we wanted to have a hand in, helping to shape federal policy and make a difference. And this was our time. So it was a major move, and it has been the ride adventure, and it has been the funnest thing that we've ever done.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because every time I've spoken to you about what you're doing, you're incredibly optimistic and engaged and enthusiastic. And while, a lot of people that I talk to that spend time in government end up being burned out and disenchanted and all things like that. What has been different for you guys?
So I think the thing is that when President Trump won, he was talked to the everyday American. And he talked, he uses the phrase of draining the swamp, but it really was about taking a look at how the federal government is serving you, the American people. And his belief that it wasn't serving the everyday American very well. And so Art and I felt that way. And so we thought if we had the opportunity, we wanted to take a chance and see if we could figure out what is really almost like a foreign language, the federal government. And so we took a year or so figuring it out. And then we wanted to figure out how we could help and really make sure that the everyday American understood exactly what their federal government was and was not doing for them. My husband works in policy. I work in grant making, but I have to say that, probably the biggest thing I've learned is a lot of grant making is policy.
Right.
Because where the money goes.
It's funny. I sat in the West Wing a few months ago and talked to some other members of the Domestic Policy Committee. I was trying to get them to do stuff on homelessness. And somebody from the Economics Committee looked at me and said, well, what can I do, by way of policy that would make a difference? And he explained to me he meant money. Where can money go or money be? And he finally looked at me and he goes, what if I lifted the IMD exclusion? And I was like, oh my God, that would change everything. So that there are things that can be done. They're hard to do. I understand that, but there are things that can be done that can make huge differences.
And not to, this isn't a political show, and I work for the Department of Justice, obviously, as a political appointee, but I will say that what I love and also can understand appears chaotic to the outsider is how flatlined the government has become. Instead of it being siloed and everybody just figuring out their own problem and maybe duplicating, we've actually all worked together. And, the president's recent executive order on mental health, which Art had a big part in creating, about, the dangers of prolonged COVID lockdown on people with substance use disorders and the mentally ill, along with our veterans, a huge concern for the administration. So we all come together. That HHS is talking to DOJ, who's talking to HUD, and we really are all starting to communicate and work together, which means that we are reducing the size of the federal government, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes, good. But talk about now, if you wouldn't mind, when I think about you and your husband serving the needs of Americans, one of the things that some of the federal organizations get steeped in ideologies of various types, not any specific ideology even, but you guys both come from the pragmatic world of recovery and how that works, and that's really not had significant voices in government until recently. So tell me about your story with that and the drug courts and what that experience was like and what you're doing to apply some of those ideas here.
Sure. So I have 23 years clean and sober, not something that is a humongous part of my story. It's just been for so long. When I became a prosecutor and was a defense attorney and had a private civil practice for a period of time, and then when I went on the bench as a judge, obviously the theme that you see is drugs and alcohol, is getting people into the criminal justice system oftentimes. And I remember what frustrated me more than anything was telling people with multiple DUIs, that was really the one. And you would look at them and say, okay, you can't drink, no more drinking, no drugs.
Right.
And good luck. You're on probation. You're going to do the exact same treatment you've done the 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 other times you've done before. Colorado at that time did not have any prison. There was no prison for, you could have 20 DUIs and not go to prison.
Wow.
And so it seemed ridiculous based on what I knew. So I went to a training at the National Judicial College, and someone sort of mentioned this idea about drug courts and DUI courts, and I was like, yep, count me in. Came back a month later, we started. And it's
so did Colorado have nothing like that at that point?
No, they did. There was, problem-solving courts have been around. I think the first one was in Florida, and it's been about 20 years. It's been in the last decade, I think, that it's pretty much exploded. We do have the 10 key components. The federal government is involved, the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, and there's a lot of resources out there for drug court. I always like to think, and anybody you talk to, Dr. Drew, to be honest, will probably tell you that their drug court is the most spectacular one on earth. It's just something.
Well, yours actually was. Yours actually was.
No,
so, but that's a separate issue. But yes,
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So if everybody wants it right. But I will tell you that I do believe that we did have the most spectacular drug court at DUI. We had 2 separates. We had a DUI court, and then we were putting really drug court clients in there just to get them some help. And that is not best practices. A hybrid model is not most effective. So we just separated them, and I just presided over both. My team was the same for both as well, because we were just also committed. And I have to just give a shout out to Karen Hager and Taggart Howard and Kiko Doi and all the people who worked on my drug court. Tyra was my DA for a long time. And it is a multidisciplinary team. But I always approached it as it's also a court of law, and these are also criminal defendants.
Right.
And I was alarmed at the sort of lax nature that some judges did take toward running their drug courts, and they would allow the treatment providers or the probation officer to totally take over. And I wanted my...
They don't understand it. They don't understand treatment. They also don't understand what real compassion is for a drug addict. Real compassion is holding them accountable.
Yep. I used to say the most loving thing, I'm going to do the most loving thing that I can think to do right now. And I would tell my defense, I'm going to hold you accountable. I told you there was a rule and an expectation. You did not meet that rule or expectation, and I'm now going to hold you accountable. And
that's how treatment's done. By the way, that's how we do treatment. That's how treatment works, Katie. In treatment, somebody like you're going to follow the structure. You're going to show up on time. You're going to finish your first step. And if you're not now, if you're sick, detoxing, we can talk about that. But if there's no compelling reason you can't meet the requirements of the program that you have agreed to follow, you will be discharged. It's pretty simple. Right. Referred somewhere else at most.
And that's exactly the approach that I would take. And I loved and you and I have talked, but I loved the tests that would come. And we had a very healthy team. So my multidisciplinary team, that's one thing that we would call each other. We would, a certain defendant would trigger one of us, and we would sort of call each other out on it, make sure that we were, had very healthy behaviors toward what we were doing. And that was.
Uh-oh. Katie just froze, Susan.
Tremendous justice system, and I do believe that criminal justice system has been under attack on some level over the last decade as well.
Right.
And me, you are a defendant who is about to have long-term incarceration. I'm giving myself and these other people on the team are giving you an opportunity to have freedom. And these are the expectations of you in order to have freedom. And I'm not kidding. And if you don't meet those expectations, and you want to test, then we can go that route. Most of the clients after about a year would just tell each other and say, she's not going to buy it, so forget it. Good luck. So we were really big on both sanctions and incentives. And we had, I think very fun and fair and engaging incentives, and the sanctions were exactly what our clients were told to expect. So the dentistry that would always come in about week 6, everyone had to go to the dentist. And I think dentists are very liberal with their script writing. Mm-hmm. And we would say, oh my goodness, that's too bad. You have to go get this dentistry. That's terrible. And you can use Advil. So
or Tylenol, sure.
Yes, or Tylenol. Yeah. Uh-huh. And I saw my husband has done that every time he had a bad once, and it was horrible, and we couldn't get it.
Hold on, Katie. We have a garbly in there.
The transmission just got screwed up for a second here. We did get the story about the dentist and the use of Tylenol as opposed to opening their script pad.
Maybe we can turn off a couple cell phones in the room. That'll help your Wi-Fi a little bit.
In their room?
Yeah. Okay. Because it sounds like it's coming from her end. It's not me. I hope I have one of those shows today. You never know.
It doesn't feel like it seems like.
Is it better now or no?
Yes, that is better.
Perfect.
That is significantly better.
Okay, great.
Sound is my
I think the federal government needs to update its technologies. At least the Department of Justice does.
Get you an Ethernet cord.
Let me read you some questions and comments we're getting on the chat here. It's some interesting stuff. People seem to not understand quite, let's see. They don't quite get the idea of holding people accountable. I can't tell you how well, let's put it this way. What was the outcome data like for your cases?
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot and thinking about getting to talk to you about, about my courts, which I miss very, very much. I got an email approximately probably 17 days ago from a client who had just gotten 5 years of sobriety, had picked his coin up.
That's great.
I got an email a year ago of someone who'd graduated from college. I have people who graduated from my court who remain in touch with me. We had someone studied our court and compared it with another court, and we had 79% who graduated.
There you go.
And to get someone through a drug court, all the studies do show that that it's recidivism drops. Even if someone goes back to using, their criminal behavior may drop. And I used to tell my clients all the time, and I call them clients, defendants, I would tell them all the time that I set the bar up here because you will meet it. You will do what you need to do to meet it. That's what human nature does. If I set it way down here, you're not going to jump over it. And while it sounds like it was all just hell for these people, it wasn't. We did we really rewarded good behavior as much as we held bad behavior accountable.
I find it's interesting that you had a team also, because that's one of you can't do it alone. That's the other thing. You have to have, and you were saying that some addicts were triggering to you, but by the same tokens, I bet you that some of your team had special insight into certain patients. I bet I call them patients, that certain clients were responded to certain team members better than others. That's kind of the nature of recovery, is that it's an interpersonal disease, and recovery is an interpersonal process. And so you can't organize anything by yourself and expect it to do that much.
Yep. And that was the thing, is we had a alcohol and drug counselor. Kenny Hamburg was with us for the majority of time. Wonderful guy, long-term recovery. We had a psychologist. So when someone, when trauma was triggered or they had any other issue, we had a psychologist who worked with us, who basically pro bono, which was incredible. We had a defense attorney, a district attorney. We had a coordinator. All those people sat on a team to create, and everybody had input. That being said, as the judge, I did think that ultimately it was my decision, and I also thought that the defendant also had the right to be heard. Of course, due process does not go out the window with the drug court. So, we'd have evidence that someone was using and had a positive test, and I would get input from the team, and then we would go and hear from the defendant in court, and then go from there.
We're getting scratchy again. Let's let the thing catch up with us. While we do that, let me read a comment from Sarah Moore, and I'll just let you respond to it, because I'm not quite sure what she's getting at, but it may be more meaningful to you. When prosecutors offer a felony conviction, or the government will monitor you for 2 years and throw you in jail if you mess up, many will choose the first option. That's reality. I think she's talking about plea bargaining in a routine court setting, not a drug court setting.
Yep. And she's right. She's really right. And many people, one of the things that we did was make sure that this was not a forever process. That is, it was 1 year for DUI clients and 18 months for drug court clients. And if it just appeared that you were not going to make it through, we didn't just keep trying. I visited some drug courts where they were on their 4th year of being in drug court, and that's not working for anyone, right?
No, right.
You either want to get it, do what you need to do. And so I understand exactly what Sarah is saying, and I agree with her. And I would have big talks with people about, you have to be willing. I can't force you. Maybe this is the intervention where you're ready to give this a try.
Right.
I told a lot of my defendants, try it our way for 1 year. 1 year. Because everything that you're doing right now, you can go back to.
Right. Right. Pretty easily.
Your life. Yep. So.
I have another.
I agree with
We're getting great comments on my chat stream here. Leopold says, please ask the judge about her own experience in recovery and how willingness and honesty are required in drug court, but there's a legal gun to their head. Again, I'm not entirely clear what he's saying. And let me also say, I've often wondered how, there is sometimes a tension between abject honesty and representing yourself well in court. You know what I mean? And how do you deal with those sorts of issues? Yeah.
I 100% do. And at least for us in our drug court, and what a great question. Thank you so much. Was that Leopold? Thank you. So for us, what we did was that relationship with the therapist was sacred. The therapist could not keep secrets from us. That was very important, that we were all very open and honest, because you can have a lot of triangulation in drug court teams, and that's very unhelpful.
Any team with addicts, and splitting.
Totally. Yep. And so we would never ask about detail. We wouldn't need to know detail. I wouldn't expect people to get to the podium and tell me all of their deep, dark secrets or, anything like that. I don't expect them to make a confession about, prior crimes or anything of that nature. What I would look for from our therapist is that they felt like this person was being really open and honest. And we also had a peer group component to our drug court. So you had to engage in some kind of peer group support. So
did you have a warm handshake, a handoff kind of thing? People who've been through the court before, or just people from the program?
It would be, so you could go to any peer support group that you wanted to. There's one that sort of had a therapist lead kind of called, I think it was MRT, that we made that available. But then for the majority, people went to AA or NA, and they would, we did ask that they work their program. So whatever program you were in, you had to work it. And so we would look for them to be working steps. And that was, I would say, Leopold asked about my own recovery. Probably what helped me the most was if I asked someone, so what step are you on? Good for you. I don't need to read your, notes or anything. They would say it's step 4. And I'd say, oh, that's great. What's step 4? Tell me all about that. And they'd say, well, I'm making amends. And I'd be like, oh.
No, you're not. You were not working on step 4.
And I never use that. That would not be something, because it's called anonymous for a reason. And so we would never use those things for a sanction. That would not be sanctionable, but it would be a signal to our team that someone was not telling the truth.
Right.
And that was important to know.
So how does this inform what you're doing now at the federal government? And what are your plans?
Oh my gosh. Well, my plans, obviously, take over the world. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. No.
Sending you back to the program.
Okay. So I think that what I love is bringing practicality to people who have worked in the federal government for a long time. And what I've learned is that I've learned so much from the people who are longtime federal government employees, so much. And I so appreciate their position and expertise. And yet at the same time, I like to think that I can bring in something that's a little more practical. Like if you're putting these conditions on a grantee, they can't possibly meet them. Right. Not-for-profit who are doing reentry programs don't have access to recidivism data. So as soon as you do that, you just knocked out all not-for-profits from being able to work with reentry clients if you say they must come up with recidivism data. So for me, I just like to look at every word and everything we're doing and just really trying to make the federal government much more a servant to its people than thinking that the people should be somehow, and also talk in plain language. oh my gosh, when I first got here, you have to Google all the acronyms.
That's really
And I would
funny.
have I wanted to seem competent, and so I kept trying to look everything up, and finally after 2 days, I was like, guys, you cannot use an acronym. I don't know what.
Hold on. I'm gonna stop you again. There goes your mic. Hold on. It's weird. It catches up and then you're good again. So
She gets excited and the phone just goes, oh.
yeah.
Slower.
I don't know.
Am I back?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what that is.
Give it another 20 seconds or so because it seems to completely reset and do fine.
Somebody just hopped on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's but I think you're back. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in any event, it is, for me, it's trying to have people talk in very direct and common sense language. And that's from learning that I didn't know what anyone was talking about when I first got to the government. So that's a big lesson and something we're trying to work on.
Interesting. And are they compliant with that? Are they willing to speak in English?
Yes, they are.
Good.
They are. I think it's fun for both of us. They try to talk one way and I push back. So yeah, no, that's been really fun. And it's been, I've learned more look, to be over middle-aged, into the last third of my life, and to be able to have the opportunity to learn and serve, and I hope in a great way, I just can't imagine. It's the honor of a life, except there's only one thing that I liked better, and that was meeting you, Dr. Drew. You were on my top 5 people in my life that I wanted to meet.
That's very kind. You guys have been so fun to be around because we, more than anything, the 3 of us see this problem. We experience it as the same thing. We know what it is and we know what should be done. We know the frustrations with some of the ideologies out there and some of the shortcomings of my profession and the government. And so when we get together and talk about changing things, it's pretty exciting.
It is. And I'll say, I used to tell my team, I'd say, well, I might have to pull a Dr. Drew today with this client. I get up, turn your head, and
do the sideways.
No, you just go, I wonder what is that? I wonder what that is.
And then they start crying.
And I also want to say, and this is real, thank you for Celebrity Rehab, because there's a lot of discussion about taking stigma away from addiction.
Yeah.
And I know it's something that this administration cares very much about. But Celebrity Rehab did more to take the stigma out of addiction than I think almost anything. I'm waiting for there to be a drug court TV show or something where, people actually see what this is really like and also see the miracle of recovery. And
that you just articulated our naive little idea when Bob Forrest came in my office one day and said, I'm just sick of how people our patients oftentimes, no one knew we were treating them at the time, but celebrities were being portrayed on TV as either, making excuses or on a vacation, or how hard the work is, what really goes on, how sick people are, how much they struggle. And that was what we were trying to do. So it means a lot to me that you say that we accomplished that. And there's still stigma to go. I mean, we still have, it's funny, the addicts don't really feel much stigma. The family are the ones that feel stigma more than any.
I think so too. And I think we used to encourage families to come to see what court was like, obviously for graduation. But the number one thing we would always say is, you are an addict. And we would talk very openly about that with the people who came to court. And lucky you. That's what I used to tell people. I've got great news for you.
Yeah.
You are an addict. And that's great news because there's so much help and there's so much there's so many resources for you.
No,
And
that is
if
exactly right. And I don't think I've explained to either you or Art, but that the genetics that set people up for alcoholism and addiction are actually evolutionary advantageous adaptations. And it's one of the reasons I like working with addicts and alcoholics. They're smarter, they're more creative, they're a very rich populations of humans, and they are better at surviving in extreme circumstances. That is the fundamental sort of thing about addicts, is that they get high from experiences that the rest of us want to run away from. And evidently that increases your probability of survival in certain situations.
It must be why Art and I are doing so well in the federal government.
That's one of the things.
You
You're right.
started
You
this
can fight the fight.
You-
Tell me
you
about
started this by saying, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, tell me about
No, go ahead.
the executive order and what your participation is with that now.
Oh, the mental health executive order was imperative. Prolonged lockdowns, we're forgetting. I sit up at night, honestly, worried about what's happening with not only, people with substance use disorders, the addicts. What an excuse. They can't get to meetings.
Right.
They can't interact with other people. Art really was so poetic about really what this issue was when he talked to you last week. Isolation is one of the key to a successful addiction, and we're isolating people.
Right.
It's horrible.
Right. We're living like drug addicts. All of us are living like drug addicts, and drug addicts are living like drug addicts, especially. There's some data that came out last week, I don't know if you saw, that shows that the incidence of death from drug overdoses in the city of San Francisco was 4 times the death rate of COVID. So one, we entirely shut the city and the state down for. The other, death rate is 4 times higher, and we are doing exactly nothing in California. What the hell? It's almost unbelievable. Well, hold on. We have to stay quiet. I think we've got
Garbly goobers again.
we have our bug again. They're back in. So let's give it a second. People have lots of advice for us on how to fix our technical problem. Oh, Susan, one of the things they're asking is, why is my camera crooked? I'm leaning to the side.
Here, let me do this. This will help.
Let's see. While we wait for the
You
sound
won't
to
notice
reset.
it. It's because I threw it in 2 minutes and it just.
I know, and I came running in from across town.
I know. I'm sorry, you guys. It's not.
So
You know.
I'm trying to. You
better?
should
I
know I'm
noticed-
trying to get my head lined up with Katie's. Let me see. There we go.
Yeah, just do that.
That's it.
Walnut.
That's what I've been doing. No, I'm better now.
Is the
I'm sort of
sound
lined up. The
better now?
room is off though, so people are getting
Yeah, that's
dizzy.
better. All right.
Um,
All right. Stop complaining.
I'm not the one complaining. Casey Gates, I'm glad you're seeing a therapist twice a week. Well done. And so, here we go. So JH is saying, COVID is not a choice. Doing drugs is a choice. Talk to me about choice and drug addiction. Katie, go ahead.
Oh, if you are an addict and you cannot get the help you need because you're locked down, I don't know. Art was quoting things the other day and said it's a 13% increase in addiction. A 13% increase is death for an addict.
Yeah.
And I think about, there's not eyes on vulnerable people. And you just look at this today with us and the garbled sound and the camera, whatever.
Hey, this is quality television. Come on.
No, but if you're doing telehealth or telecourt
Yeah.
or whatever, teletherapy, you don't have eyes on that person.
Yeah.
What about these kids? What
Yeah.
about
Oh,
the
yeah.
kids
Yeah.
that are vulnerable and nobody can see them in person? And they have a parent standing right off camera telling them, you better not. And and domestic violence victims, I'm so concerned
Yeah.
that, what do they say when you're a doctor, the cure is worse than the disease?
Right.
And
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I've been complaining about this from the beginning, that there is a complete lack of risk-reward analysis for each of the non-pharmacological interventions that non-medical people are advocating. And it's having massive effect in other areas of health. I'm particularly dismayed, disappointed, mortified at people who are so-called public health officials that seem to be completely ignorant to the public health impact of the choices they're making beyond just the data on coronavirus. And it's gravely concerning, both in terms of the delay in treatment of people coming to hospitals and getting their proper treatment, and in terms of the mental health consequences. But JH, unfortunately, you don't seem to understand what addiction is. It is a disorder of the brain that takes over your decision-making process. So everything you think and feel leads you back to using. So you think you're making good choices, but you end up using. It's not a choice, because choice no longer exists when you're under the influence of these chemicals, if you have the genetic disease that gets unlocked. That's in the nature of the condition. Oh boy, Shrinkadello says he has genetic predilection for addiction. He kept alcoholism under control until COVID, and we're hearing a lot of those kinds of stories. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. It's just, prolonged shutdowns have consequences, and that's what the president's executive order on mental health is addressing, is that we've got to remember we need human interaction. Vulnerable populations need that. I couldn't imagine doing my drug court like this online, by Zoom, by webinar.
Hard, right?
I just imagine.
Whoop. You okay? Did we lose you?
Yeah.
I think there you are. Susan is doing jumping jacks. I'm not quite sure what they mean. You can jump on the mic there, Susan, and tell me what you're doing. Is Katie's
We have Kelly on the line.
Kelly, okay. So,
but as soon as you're done.
okay, that's what you were telling me.
And it sounds.
Okay. The other thing, Leanne is saying, what about, Leanne, you say that you don't have NA in your town, but you have it on Zoom. You have it on Zoom. You can do that, which is not ideal, but you do have that. And then somebody said something about choosing to do drugs when you're 14. Why someone starts doing drugs and then the disease of addiction are two different things, okay? When you start doing drugs, it's either to feel good or feel better. Typically feel better from trauma. That's the most common reason that people can't regulate their emotions. They're too prolonged, too intense, and too negative. And then once they find drugs, they do make that choice to use drugs. So you could argue that the society is giving them solutions to their emotional problems that our family systems cause. But okay, we can argue about that. But once you do that, then you trigger a biological process that's completely outside of your control. And that's the disease of addiction. And really all you can choose at that point is to throw yourself into the hands of a structure like Katie's Drug Court or my treatment center, or you have to just throw yourself into, so other people's brains can take over, because your brain will always lead you to the wrong place. That about right, Katie?
I mean, that's exactly right. And I would like to go back to the stigma with the family and just really encourage people to go to Al-Anon. Al-Anon it teaches you how to live. And when you open up about substance abuse and recovery, inevitably someone says, oh gosh, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my mother, my this. Go to Al-Anon. It is a family disease.
Yeah.
The greatest thing you can do.
It's not the greatest thing. It's so funny. I'll say what, I always, the families come in a treatment setting and go, I'll do anything. I go, I want you to do one thing, only one thing. Are you ready? You're ready to do it? I'll do anything. Tonight, go to an Al-Anon meeting, get a sponsor, and keep going to Al-Anon. Okay, but what do I need to do? No, that's it. They do that one thing. Well, what else can I do? It's like, if you're not either in therapy and or Al-Anon, you are part of the problem, and people can't get that. I understand it's not your disease, but this is a disease that pulls everything in with it, And so it is your problem if you have a family member with it, unfortunately. Katie, I got to wrap this thing up. Is there anything else you want to tell people? Yeah, you want to tell people about before I wrap you up?
No, I just want to tell everyone that Dr. Drew is as amazing in person as you see him on TV. It was, I said, you were one of my top 5 people to meet, and I just love knowing you, and I love what you do. Thank you so much for being a voice. Thank you.
It is my distinct pleasure, but more importantly, thank both of you and Art, for what you guys do. I can't tell you how excited I am having Art over at ONDCP, and I'm in awe of all you're doing at Department of Justice. It seems overwhelming to me that where you sit. I just admire your guys' courage and fortitude. So keep doing it, and you can count on me to back you up in any way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Bye, Susan.
Katie,
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
That is the Honorable Katie Sullivan, OJP.gov. And we're going to bring in our friend, Dr. Kelly Victory, for a little COVID controversy talk, just to wrap things up here for the next 15, 20 minutes. Kelly Victory, are you there?
Hold on.
Oh, she's coming.
Talk to your Restream people.
I am looking at the Restream. Leanne, I don't know what FTW means. Maybe somebody can explain that to me. Did I see? Yeah, George Clark. I'll talk to. There you are, Dr. Kelly Victory. How are you?
Oh my God, I heard her on KBC today. She was so good.
She was on fire on the radio today.
I had to drive 90 miles and I listened. I had to listen to every minute of it, even though I've heard her say it 12 times.
What did you learn? If I could put you on the spot, do you want anything you want us to review that you heard on KBC?
I don't think we've spoken to Kelly since the WHO came out with the anti-lockdown, so she could say, "Hey, that's me. That's all me."
So World Health Organization came out strongly against locking down, saying it only makes poor people poorer.
Right.
That's the Kelly Victory approach.
It is. Well, it's really in line also, Drew, with the Great Barrington Declaration, with the idea of focused protection.
Yeah.
The big error, or one of the big errors in this entire response, was treating everyone as if we were all at equal risk from COVID-19, which simply isn't the case. So when you lock down the entire society, you penalize and really harm a tremendous number of people who should in fact be out running their lives the way that they always did, because they simply are not at any significant risk from getting ill or hospitalized.
So I have an article I'm going to send you that is mind-blowing to me. It will give you something to talk about tomorrow on KBC if you're on again. Here is the headline. Governor Newsom says California will review FDA-approved COVID vaccines before allowing them to be used by the public.
Review it or
so you literally have the state of California now getting in the way of drug companies, of the FDA-approved drug distribution of vaccines. It is insanity.
It is insanity because for some reason they feel obligated to insert themselves at every possible point along the way. They're inserting themselves where they don't belong.
And they've been wrong every step. The clinical director of the state of California Public Health said we were going to have a 90% increase in hospitalization by today. By last Sunday. Instead, we've had a 20% decline.
Right.
Do you care to adjust your position, gentlemen? It's unbelievable.
No, they've been wrong. They've been truly, this is, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. They've been wrong far more than they've been right.
Yes.
But furthermore, what is their jurisdiction even to weigh in on this? There's a reason we have.
Oh my God.
I don't see even where they get off even suggesting that.
Yes. That's mortifying to me. It really is just mortifying. That I want that vaccine as fast as I can get it. So you're going to get in the way of healthcare providers getting the vaccine? What the F?
Yeah, it's scary stuff because I don't know. Are they suggesting that they're going to run a counter trial? That they're on what basis would they make a decision? as you know from things I've said on the show before, I am number one, wildly pro-vaccine in general. I have my concerns about the speed with which this particular vaccine is being brought to market. That said, I can make a decision whether or not I personally want to take the vaccine.
Exactly.
If it is FDA approved, then it's FDA approved, and people should be able to make that decision for themselves.
Anything that gets in the way of citizen agency is being executed by the government of California.
Correct. And honestly,
stunning.
It is stunning is the word. I think, frankly, it would not withstand a constitutional challenge if people went that way. There are cases being brought against all sorts of other things that have constituted government overreach, particularly in California. Lockdowns of churches, for example, being one. The continued lockdowns or shutting of schools, those sorts of things. But this is just ridiculous. The idea that they would even have jurisdiction to upend or to hold up an FDA approved drug or vaccine is ridiculous.
I just sent this article to you and to Mark Garagos. So let's see if anything comes of it. Okay, so let's go back to the World Health Organization and what your thoughts are on the anti-lockdown position. I expected them almost as quickly to come off that position because London lockdown and France lockdown, but no, they seem to have stuck with it.
Well, here's my theory on that. As you well know, I've been an anti-lockdown person from the beginning. It's nice to have a little company now. It was getting kind of lonely hanging out. it was getting a little cold out there on my own for these months. But here's what I think happened. It was interesting when I was saying it and a few others in the United States were saying it. Now, particularly after the Great Barrington Declaration came out and has gotten global support, countries all across the planet are signing on to that. I think what's happened with the World Health Organization is they finally had to retrench and say, whoops, it's one thing to tick off the United States. The US had already pretty much jettisoned from the WHO. But when you start ticking off the UK and Germany and France and Spain and other countries, I think they felt like they needed to perhaps retrench and come out with a more measured statement about the lockdowns, because there's no question they're having it's just a profoundly negative effect on hundreds of millions of people around the globe.
Poor people poorer, mental health problems worse. Right. The data I like quoting is in San Francisco last week, 4 times the death rate from overdoses relative to COVID. 4 times. Right. Yeah. Think about that.
Really scary. We've seen from the beginning a huge decrease, for example, in reports of child abuse and neglect. Again, not because child abuse and neglect have declined during this ridiculous lockdown and kids being locked at home with their parents, but because teachers are the primary people who report that. And when kids aren't in school in person, there's no one to report that there's concern about little Johnny being neglected or abused.
I know.
And it's such a horrible thing.
Listen, half of LA Unified isn't showing up. They're just not even showing up. So it's beyond.
Right. And we're seeing that now. It's going to be with cancer, Drew. Delayed. People are missing chemotherapy appointments. People are missing dialysis appointments. And delays in the diagnosis of all kinds of cancers. It's really tragic.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's go back to the lockdown topic for a second. I spoke to someone this morning in London where they have reinitiated lockdown. What's fascinating is lockdown doesn't mean the same thing wherever you are. It turns out in London, lockdown means you can go to work, you can go to school, you can go to the grocery store. You're just not allowed to hang out with your friends. I mean, that's lockdown, right?
Yeah, that's what they said.
No, and you bring up a great point, Drew, because not only does lockdown not mean the same thing country to country, but neither do cases. Because other countries are not hand over fist testing asymptomatic people the way we are in the United States. Yep. So when you hear these reports of, the United States has got more cases than anybody else, or we've got more uptick in cases because we're being bad people and not wearing masks or whatever it is that we're not doing today, you have to remember that there are different parameters, different guidelines completely. What they are doing in the UK, in Spain, in Germany is very, very different from what we are doing here in the United States.
That to me, that caught my attention. I heard that this morning. It really did shock me. Here comes my wife. Something's.
Well, not only is this crooked, but that's crooked.
She can't. The crooked camera is one thing, but my crooked computer got her too much. I'm looking at the California data right now, and we're doing fine. In the meantime, things like Disneyland, which is responsible for 25,000 jobs, plus probably 100,000 surrounding jobs. So it's somewhere around 100,000 people are adversely affected by Disneyland closure. The only government on earth not talking to Disney about how to open their park is the state of California. It's unbelievable.
And Gavin Newsom came out with a statement today that, of course, once again, he's going to come up with a tiered way to reopen, because whenever you're not sure if you want to make something sound very scientific and well thought, come up with tiers and colors.
We have another problem with the tiers here in Los Angeles. We have 10 million people, and in order to move through the tiers, you have to go below 8 cases per 100,000, then below 6 cases, and then below 4 cases, and stay there for 2 weeks. We can't stay anywhere for 2 weeks with 10 million people. We go 4 per 100,000, we go 12 per 100,000, we go 8 per 100,000, or 15 per 100,000. The variability, the variance is too great with 10 million people. It's never going to happen until there's a vaccine. Do you agree with me?
Well, I agree. It's never going to. I'm not sure it's ever going to happen.
Even with a vaccine. I agree.
It wasn't that long ago, how time flies, that we were talking about typhus outbreaks because of the rat population in LA.
Oh, we still have that.
So exactly. You better believe we still have it. We just aren't paying attention to it right now because it's all COVID all the time right now.
I got a good thing. I got a good thing for you. I want you to think about. As an ER doctor, this is a perfect little thing. I was looking at a case of so-called Kawasaki Syndrome, which is this inflammatory syndrome that children get typically. They're starting to see it in adults. Hand lesions are part of the Kawasaki Syndrome. But in my world, Kawasaki is bright red palms, right? That's yours? Right. They don't have that. They have vasculitic-looking lesions. I think typhus is being misdiagnosed as Kawasaki's. I think these kids are getting typhus because it's that common right now.
Incredibly common, and there's no question, because most people who trained, in the past 50 years have never seen typhus.
Right. That's exactly
the evil disease that's reared its ugly head only because of the burgeoning rodent.
Exactly right.
It's
exactly right. And I've seen my own son got typhus, and I was actually the one that diagnosed it. And it's a weird blood test that's hard to obtain, and doctors don't normally get it, and you have to get it while they're sick, and then you have to get it convalescent, and doctors don't even know how to do it because it's that old a disease. And you're right, but I'm telling you, some of this Kawasaki's, if not a lot of it, is actually typhus. And doctors have got to be on the alert about that, because this one kid I saw had classic typhus hand lesions. That's what he had. He did not have Kawasaki's hand lesions at all. At least humbly, I'm not a dermatologist, but from my opinion, that's not what it looked like at all. And I've seen a fair bit of typhus living in Southern California. Kelly, the other thing is Yersinia pestis has now been in a human case in Northern California. We've done nothing with the rats down here, so it's coming. It's coming.
Exactly. Just to be clear to people, we're talking about bubonic plague. We're talking about the plague. I had predicted that we would see plague before the year was out in 2020, not because it's 2020, but because of, again, the rodent population spinning out of control, homelessness, the just abject, disgusting situation that people are living in on the streets in some of our bigger cities.
Abominable.
So, Drew, you were on Daniel Baldwin's show this morning.
Yes.
And he said that after the Laker game, there were 100,000 people.
Oh yeah,
outside
apparently I wasn't aware of this even, but he alerted me that there was a big gathering at Staples Center after the Lakers game.
And they weren't wearing masks.
That's going to be an outbreak. There will be an outbreak,
but if it's not,
but our public health officials aren't talking about it. They are not talking about it. They're talking about Labor Day still for people that went to the beach.
Well, what I would challenge them to do, if I could talk to anybody, Gavin Newsom, I'd say, I challenge you, let's go ahead with the tiers, the colored tiers, but let's set them based on hospitalizations for COVID,
Right.
or ICU admissions for COVID,
Right.
or deaths from COVID, not cases. This case-demic we are stuck in is it's a catch-22. We can't get out of it. The more we test, the more cases you will have, and it's going to continue. You cannot stop it.
And I'm looking at the national data right now, and the case-demic is far worse than the hospitalization, but the hospitalization is up from 30,000 to 38,000, let's say. So the 37,000. So it's up, it's a little bump. The death rate is down, and no evidence of change in direction on that. But we do have a slight uptick in hospitalization. Now, here's what's interesting to me about that. The states that are having the uptick in hospitalization, I was just sort of fishing around the data and looking at it. You maybe when we're done, you look at it too, and you tell me what you think. The states that never had a surge are the ones that are sort of backfilling and getting the hospitalizations that the rest of us had during the summer.
Well, here's part of the reason I think that's happening. I think the hospitalization, the slight uptick, and it's slight.
Yeah.
It's because the therapeutics, Drew, that we now have that are now available, remdesivir and antibody therapy, both require patients to be hospitalized.
Oh, interesting.
They didn't need to be hospitalized. Those weren't available before. Now, if you take hydroxychloroquine,
yeah, we used to discourage hospitalization.
Exactly,
We do everything to keep them out. Now our threshold to bring them in is far different.
Kelly has all the answers.
Kelly, that is so true. I didn't even noticed that, but that absolutely is.
I told you were amazing, Kelly.
Did she say this on
Stump
KBC
Dr.
today?
Drew.
No, it wasn't stump. It's the scales
You got
falling
him.
from my eyes. Yes, that is absolutely what happened. It was happening.
So people are going into the hospital when they otherwise didn't have
Right.
parameters to be hospitalized,
Right.
simply so they can get those therapeutics.
No, in fact, we were urging stay home. That was sort of more of the mode.
Right.
And what about my idea that the surge is sort of backfilling in states that didn't get their surge during the summer?
Yes, I think it probably is, and they probably are catching up with
Yeah.
They're catching up.
Yeah.
They're catching up with their case testing. But all of this really, I think the important thing that people need to focus on is, again, the deaths from COVID, ICU admissions, and really people who are becoming significantly ill. And those numbers continue to fall.
Right. The vast majority of cases are going to do just fine. Even the ones that need some hospitalization, which is, as you say, which is the at-risk group, which we're bringing in early and rendering that care to,
And getting them a vaccine.
No,
Eventually.
Eventually, but we're giving them convalescent plasma and Regeneron and remdesivir and all this stuff.
Don't they have to get the vaccine even if they get the virus?
Well, that's a different. Yeah, that's a new topic. Well, that's for another day.
Okay, so Kelly today said that, how many people do you know who have COVID-19 who are horribly sick? Like what? Probably zero. Because for our friends that have gotten it, they just were like, I had a little scratchy throat.
No, I've lost patience.
Right. Well,
I've
I know
had
you do.
some-
I know there's those people, but most people can get through it.
Most
like
people,
the president did.
that I know that have had it either barely knew they had it or didn't know they had it. So that are not patients of mine. I mean, I have a lot of elderly patients.
So the people that don't want to have the vaccine, who are sort of like those people, don't really need the vaccine if they don't care if they get it.
That's Kelly's point, is that she's saying for something that's so low risk, why would you take an unknown
Everybody
therapeutic?
needs it, just the high risk.
I'm going to take it. I want to push science forward.
Well, you're high risk. You have to have it.
I'm higher risk. Yeah. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
I don't
I'm
know
willing
if
to
I
take the
am.
risk. Kelly, not so much.
I'll just take it because you are.
No, and again, I am pro-vaccine for most things. I'm not concerned about this particular virus. Right now, my concerns, again, are the speed with which they're trying to bring this to market. We've now had two of the companies that are working on it have now put their trials on hold, and which isn't unusual, as you've got to know.
Right.
Vaccine trials commonly go on hold when they
Right.
have a couple of, or, a handful of patients with particular side effects. My concern is that the side effects have fallen into a single bucket, which is that, that people need to understand. Sometimes side effects can be something very mild, like pain and swelling at the injection site.
Yeah.
which is a nothing.
Yeah.
They could be something like a low-grade fever and muscle aches for 24 hours. Not a big deal, not uncommon after a vaccine. These things that put these trials on hold fell into the neurologic category. They had a number of patients who developed transverse myelitis, which is an extraordinarily scary thing. It's when you have inflammation of an area of the spinal cord below which you actually are paralyzed.
It's actually, when it's really bad.
Yeah, that's no good.
It's really bad.
Sort of like when you have a penicillin reaction.
It's like no. It's think more like MS or something.
Yeah.
Your brain, your central nervous system is
attacked. It may turn around and it may not.
Right.
Paralyzed.
Yikes.
One more thing before I let you go. I got to kind of wrap up, but I started thinking, somebody was tweeting about how we've never reached herd immunity for measles and chickenpox stuff, and I thought, well, of course not, because every year we have a new crop of children, and you can't, children are born and they're not immune, so there's never going to be herd immunity. But then I started thinking about measles and how infectious it is, and measles is so infectious that if somebody with measles coughs in an aisle in the grocery store for 2 hours, anyone that walks through that aisle, if they've not had measles or the vaccine, will get measles.
Right.
And measles encephalitis, there are all kinds of horrible complications. Measles killed children, lots of them. And yet we never, and it's more infectious, way more infectious than coronavirus, and yet we never shut the world down for that. Doesn't that seem weird to you?
Exactly. Think of all the epidemics, the outbreaks of measles that have happened, even just in the past 5 years, Drew, in the state of California. Several huge outbreaks. Do you remember anybody having mask mandates?
No.
No, should be making one-way traffic in the aisle at the Walmart.
Right.
I mean,
well, listen,
plexiglass shields.
I've said before, I almost died of H1N1, and no one knew that happened, and that killed 600,000 people.
There are very few people who have a mild case of measles. Drew, you get sick with it, and adults and children alike get sick with it if you haven't been vaccinated. So the number of people who become significantly ill from measles or from influenza or chickenpox is much higher than from COVID. Yet we have, and that was my point, Susan, on the radio show today, is I'm simply imploring people to not simply listen to what they're hearing on the mainstream media, what they're reading in the press, but to open your eyes. People have stopped trusting what they see in front of them. How many people do you personally know? Now, Drew, you and I are in a different category because we're physicians, but I'm saying your average person, how many people do you know personally who are ill or hospitalized or became profoundly sick with COVID-19? And for most people, the answer is zero.
I finally met somebody whose parents all got it. They were like in their 80s and 90s, and the aunt passed away. But the 92-year-olds lived. But I'm assuming, I don't know, there was some, they all had complicated situation. But I was like, oh my gosh, I just found somebody finally who passed from it. Like from a friend of a friend.
It's still one person removed. You don't know anybody directly, though.
I don't. And then, well, we know somebody who's sick, but they're not. I mean, I haven't checked in. I think he's still alive. But
who you? Oh, John.
John. Yeah, I think I would have heard if anything happened.
If he got bad, we would have heard.
Yeah, but I mean, he was like, everybody's quarantined. His wife can't go to work, and they're like, well, this is really hard to do.
Well, you guys, I gotta kind of wrap things up. Kelly, as always, I could talk and talk and talk, and I appreciate
know,
you.
And you're so great. I just love listening to you. You need your own radio show.
You have a super fan in Susan Pinsky. So if you need anybody to tweet for you or retweet, she's in.
No, she just tells it like it is.
But today, I think particularly...
Stop fearing it, Try to be logical. Use your head.
Yeah, and I think today, particularly, there was a lot of stuff that need clarifying. I think we did a nice job of pouring through that.
And we're going to New York this week. We're flying tomorrow.
Yep.
We got COVID tested on Saturday, and we have to get it on Friday.
We're
and then
negative.
We have to get
Damn it. I'm pissed that I'm negative.
I know. I told her, I said, we're going to be negative. And she's like, oh, really? And I'm like, yes. we don't even have a life. Like we haven't been around anybody.
I travel very frequently. I fly very, very frequently, and it's really not so bad. You have to have your mask.
Yeah.
But other than that,
I like it. I'm a germaphobe. I love it. I love that everything's
she
clean.
likes the idea of the UVC robots and all that
I like
stuff.
that the bathrooms smell clean and you have a mask on, so you
Yeah,
can't
we were
smell anything.
Clorox adapters on aircraft long ago.
well, they hand you when you get on, they hand you a little alcohol
Hand
wipe so you can wipe down your personal area.
Oh no,
So-
I bring the heavy guns. I
Yeah,
bring
she
like
brings
the antiseptic.
UVC lights,
hospital
Clorox, bleach, all
grade.
kinds of stuff.
I wipe.
Glutaraldehyde.
I leave
she
like
pours around.
I leave like white streaks on all the screens. And
All right. Well, listen, I do have to run, and Kelly, I appreciate you being here as always.
we
and
have to plug our shows before you run, though, Drew. We'll say goodbye to
Okay,
Kelly.
I'll say goodbye to Kelly first. Bye, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
We'll
and you can
talk to
find her
soon.
at Kelly Victory on Twitter, and also you can listen to KBC and hear her on there.
And her website.
And your website?
No, I have a YouTube channel.
YouTube
YouTube channel.
Is Victory Health Inc.
That's right.
So Victory
Sorry, I
Health
don't
Inc. or at Twitter at Dr. Kelly Victory.
You're a goddess.
Bye, Kelly.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Anytime.
See ya.
Love to be back.
Bye.
Bye.
And then, Susan, you want me to promote what's coming up this week? Ooh, palpitations.
What?
Just me. I get them
don't
once in
be
a while.
silly.
Leopold had a light bulb moment. What was the light bulb moment, Leopold? Interesting.
Okay, so
Wednesday, we have a big show, right?
hold on. I'm just taking her out.
Okay.
Sorry about the crooked camera, everybody.
Casey, Tom got arrested again. Tom Sizemore? Who got
Tom
arrested?
Arnold?
No, it didn't be Tom Arnold.
Sizemore?
Will I be on Fox 11 tonight? Yes, CJ, I'm heading there right now. I got to run out of here and do that. It's all the way across town for me.
Everybody misses you on there.
I did not. George Clark, I'm so sorry. I was going to bring up the Fauci thing with Dr. Victory. I'm not happy about that. I think Fauci should still be listened to. I think I'm not surprised.
What happened?
Trump is being very
He's fighting with him.
dismissive of him, and that's what Look, his job is to lead. I get it. He thinks he's leading when he comes off Fauci's position. I'm telling you, listen to Fauci. I mean, that's fine. If our leaders want to disagree with some of the experts, that's fine. They have a different job. But for the rest of us, listen to Fauci. Listen to Fauci.
I mean,
Susan, what we got coming up? Then
wow, look at all these questions. You guys are just going happiness. Okay, so we have on Wednesday by a tweet request, and I've heard it a million times before, but Mr. Doug Stanhope. So we have another comedian in the hizzy. And
so here's the deal. Doug Stanhope, who one time hated me, he and I are buddies.
Are you?
And if you read his book, which is an amazing book, I wrote the foreword. And when he called me to do it, I actually thought he was punking me because he's good friends with Pirates of the Caribbean.
Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp. And I said, when'd you get Depp to write it?
did I know that?
You want me to write it?
God, sometimes my brain works. I'm just
know, I
so
can
happy
rely on
with
it
that. I
sometimes.
know, it's crazy.
Okay,
huh?
so Doug Stanhope on Wednesday. Tyrus on Wednesday. Is that true also?
And Wednesday, maybe, yeah, I'm going to get Tyrus. I haven't confirmed him yet. But we're going to be coming in from New York. We're going to set it up and do it via VMix so we can still do the show.
Great.
And then we'll just, we'll chat about whatever. And then we'll have more Dose of Dr. Drew coming your way. I don't know if I'm ever going to Zoom, though, because I put this new program on my computer, and I had so many problems yesterday with the sound.
What does that mean?
And then it shut down, and then the cursor was flying around, and the battery died.
When they know, they said it stayed up for 5 hours afterwards with some sort of hacked banner on it.
I put that hacked as whack.
Oh, you put it up.
And then I just wanted to leave
my
up there
God,
in
that's
case.
funny.
Okay, so this is my sort of troll watching, like cyber, specialist kind of investigation. I decided to leave it up because then if somebody types something on there, they might be going, haha, I got you or something. But I don't think it was that. I think my battery was just dying, and it was acting weird. I have 2 guys coming in today, 2 geniuses to fix it.
Oh, good.
And hopefully it'll be okay, and I won't need a new computer on Thursday. So, but we'll have Dose of Dr. Drew back on Thursday and Friday and Saturday or something.
So we're doing nothing tomorrow,
but
Tuesday.
no Zoom. It's not no guests unless Caleb comes in here and
Right.
and does it via vMix.
But Wednesday we will have the great Doug Stanhope, and we will have Tyrus.
Yes,
also?
I have Tyrus said he was going to check, but he may
come in.
follow up because we like
He
to
can come in Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, I like to have him around. I feel bad because we keep canceling his day, but he's okay. The hurricane did not scathe him, and he's all good. I'm playing a new Hydrolite ad at the end because after a Better Life recovery, because it's new and I don't want it to shut down my system. It does. I want it to be at the end. So
Anarchy 704 says Fauci could not have gotten AIDS more wrong. No, that's not true, Anarchy. He was, again, conservative with that also. He was saying there would be 2 million dead. That was wrong. We ended up with about 200,000. But he felt that the public outreach we did was what moved it from a much more potentially devastating number to 200,000, which was bad enough, trust me.
And a quick shout out to drdrew.locals.com. Drew, can you explain what you're going to do?
Yes, in just a second. Andrew, I did get an antibody test. I've not seen the result yet. On Locals, we're doing two things. We're going to try to do some small groups. We're going to try to do some little primer presentations on topics, and we're trying to build community. We're trying to get you guys talking amongst yourself, and then I jump into the conversations that you're all enlightening me with, frankly. There's been lots of good conversation on there so far. I can't quite figure out the video piece yet. I got to.
We have to upload our podcast there or something.
Yeah, we're just trying to figure all this out. So it's.
But then I did a podcast and all the sound was out of sync and I couldn't do it because there's no way I'm going to put that up there. So, we might take pieces of this one or something, and I don't know, or tomorrow with Stanhope. But we'll try to.
We'll figure it out. Patience. I apologize. I intend for it to be a place that I go on a regular basis. And
how do you feel about we like this whole rational revolution thing, but how do you feel about putting up the after dark clips up there?
The after dark.
Some of them
clips.
I don't post on your Twitter because they're too.
Yes, I think we should put clips in there.
They're too sexy or whatever.
I think that'd be smart because everything we're afraid to put in social media, I want to put in there. So yes, please do.
And we might give you a little behind the scenes of when we're in New York, and I don't usually do that, but.
And Jay Shipes, yes, the Rational Revolution is what I want to have there at Locals.
So it's just a place he can post and not have his butt handed to him by all the trolls and the bots.
And Laura Powers, you asked about peer-reviewed papers for Fauci in regard to what topic, Laura? Is that mask wearing, or what are we talking about? In any event, I got to wrap this up. I really am already late. Thank you, Susan. Well done.
I know. I have a show tonight too. So if anybody wants to talk dead people, call my show.
Tune into Susan. She'll be doing this
right?
very shortly. Are you going to run the whole thing yourself?
Calling out. No, Caleb's coming, and then also the guy, my tech guy too, to fix my computer. So
yeah, Casey, I will try to get the behind the scenes stuff too. I think that's also important to just see us in our day. That's something that kind of interesting.
I don't have my calling
and you'll probably get a lot of dog pictures in there too, I suspect.
So go to facebook.com/Dr. Drew to see my Calling Out with Susan Pinsky show at 6 p.m. with the Psychic Rebel.
And AIDS, Laura, no, I'm not sure what you're talking about, the AIDS vaccine program. Kerry wanted a footnoted scientific paper so we could reference it for his AIDS vaccine program. I'm not quite sure what you're asking for because lots of AIDS vaccine publications. So, all right. Unfortunately, I would love to talk about it, but I don't have time now. I'm going to have to see you guys on Wednesday with great Doug Stanhope. See you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to try this ad.
According to SAMHSA's National Survey on Drug Use and Health, approximately 20.3 million people above the age 12 suffer from substance use disorder. Incredible. The disease of addiction takes an average of 130 Americans every day. Sadly, the opioid crisis, which many consider the worst pandemic of our time, has been even further perpetuated by the spread of COVID-19. Since the start of the coronavirus outbreak, drug overdoses have increased by 18%. Factors like economic stress and social isolation have led to increased depression and unnecessary deaths. A Better Life Recovery is a premier addiction treatment center in Southern California, offering one of the most highly regarded and comprehensive addiction treatment programs in the United States. Dedicated to helping its clients achieve complete inner and outer transformation, they offer a 45 to 90-day program custom tailored to meet the needs of each individual client. Long-term is the way to go. Many of A Better Life's clients elect to stay up to 9 months to receive additional support. A Better Life Recovery will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to ensure the success of every client. Are you ready for a better life? Go to abetterliferecovery.com or call 866-581-4401 now.